what we hear is what we hear, and what we see is what we see. What we see does not necessarily have to illustrate what we're hearing. And there's a kind of balance between this interior space and exterior.
And there were all these aisles. And there were these bathing caps that you could buy that had these kind of 4th of July plumes on them that were red and yellow and blue. And I wasn't tempted to buy one, but I was reminded of the fact that I had been avoiding the beach. I was in this prematurely air-conditioned supermarket, and there were all these aisles. And there were these bathing caps that you could buy that had these kind of 4th of July plumes on them. They were red, yellow, and blue. And I wasn't tempted to buy one, but I was reminded of the fact that I had been avoiding the beach. I was in this prematurely air-conditioned supermarket, and there were all these aisles. And there were these bathing caps that you could buy that had these kind of
德国剧作家海诺穆勒的《哈姆雷特》机器被评论界誉为是后现代主义剧场的代表著作啊。在这个剧当中有大量的一些诗化的一个语言以及意象的一个拼贴，您是不是也可以跟我们来谈一谈，你是如何来处理这些意象啊？然后非常清楚的把它表达给观众，而且也能够坚持你非常强烈的叙事风格。
In the theater I make is what we hear is what we hear, and what we see is what we see. And that what we see does not necessarily have to illustrate what we're hearing. And so I often work with something that we're seeing that can be a counterpoint to what we're hearing. I can say, I want to kill you. Or I can say, I want to kill you. And maybe the smile becomes more terrifying than this. So it's not arbitrary what we're seeing with what we're hearing, but how can they reinforce one another without having to illustrate, decorate, or second one another. Heine Müller told me shortly before he died, just a few weeks before he died, that my direction of the Hamlet machine was the best production he ever had of a work. And I said, why do you say that? He said, because you gave space to the intellectualism.
Ich will nicht mehr essen, trinken, atmen, eine Frau lieben, einen Mann, ein Kind, ein Tier. Ich will nicht mehr sterben, ich will nicht mehr töten. Ich breche mein verdientes Fleisch auf. Ich will in meinen Adern wohnen, im Mark meiner Knochen, im Labyrinth meines Schädels.
在您的剧场艺术当中啊，演员的表演部分啊，他们非常风格化的这个肢体动作，听说都是由您先来做设计啊，然后再由他们来执行。您是不是可以跟我们谈一下，为什么会有这样子的一个演员跟导演之间的互动？
The theater I make is a formal theater. It's not a naturalistic theater. I hate naturalism. I think that naturalism on stage is always looks fake. It always looks to be about a lie. So I think to be on stage is something artificial. And if you accept it as being something artificial, then you can be more honest about what you're doing. Because to be on stage, the way you speak, a text is different, the way you sing is different, the way you walk, for me, is different, the air is different, the light is different, the floor is different. The Japanese believe that the gods are beneath the floor. So the floor of the stage is different than the floor of your apartment. The way you sit in a chair is different than the way you sit at home watching television. The way you speak is different than the way you speak in a supermarket. Because you have an audience, you're being viewed. And, so the theater I make is formal. I wouldn't say it's stylized, I would say it's formal. And that a gesture is thought about and its timing. It's like dance. For me, all theater is dance. In a formal theater, there's more distance, which gives more space for reflection. Maybe that's what Heine Müller was talking about, where he said, I gave a space to the intellectualism. In a formal theater, you hold back. You allow the audience to come to you without insisting too much on the audience's attention. So therefore, the audience can participate by entering the stage space, because your emotions are withheld. In a formal theater, I can touch this glass, and it's cool, and that is my expression. I can touch my forehead, and it's warm, warmer than the glass. And this is my expression. I don't have to outwardly express it. Oh, the glass is cool, my head is warm. So it's based on a deep emotion that if I cry, it's inside. I have to cry outwardly. It's based on something, on a deep emotion. And if you are aware of your deep feelings, they will be your expression, and you don't have to outwardly portray them. Or in a formal theater, you can say, you must pay the rent. I can't pay the rent. You must pay the rent. I can't pay the rent. So you see that the actor is acting, and he knows he's acting. And the audience knows he's acting. So then we can believe him because he's aware that he's acting. So there's a distance. So my theater being a formal theater, I like this distance. I like the space it gives to the performer, to the audience, a time to think.
That's the way the gravy stains. That's the way the moon wanes.
I fell asleep down by the stream, and there I had the strangest dream. And down by Brennan's glen there grows the briar and the rose. There's a tree in the forest, but I don't know where. I'll build a nest out of your hair, and climbing up into the air, the briar and the rose.
您的舞台风格非常的简单啊，然后灯光非常的魔幻，剧场空间充满了很强烈的这个意象风格啊，演出的时间又非常的长，而且非常的慢啊。您可不可以跟我们谈谈您是如何来看待这个剧场的空间和时间这样子的关系？
Well, theater is dealing with the plastic time and space. So it's something that you can construct, you can deconstruct, you can stretch time, you can compress it, and you can construct this time space in sound, like a composer writes music. You can construct it in terms of movement, and it's your decision in making time-space constructions is how one makes it work. So I can start very slow, and then something happens quick. Or I can start with something very, very quick, very, very quick, very quick, and stop slow. It's a decision. Do I want it to be slow, fast? Do I want it to be more interior, more exterior? So I construct a piece in time and space by making decisions when things should happen. Time is a line that goes to the center of the earth and to the heavens. And space, it's a vertical line, is time. Space is a horizontal line. And it's this cross of time and space that's the basic architecture for everything. It's how you stand on stage. It's how you sit on a chair. It's how you build a building. It's how you build a table. It's how you make a painting. It's how you play a piano. Your finger goes down on a key on a piano and goes up, and the sound goes out on the string. So this is a vertical and this is a horizontal. And I can touch the key like that. I can touch it like that, any way I want. But there's this tension between the vertical and the horizontal that is the architecture of how to make music. So the basic architecture for me, it's something very personal, is a construction of time and space, this cross.
你也和不同风格的音乐家合作，像是 Tom Waits 或 Philip Glass 啊，您可不可以跟我们谈谈音乐在你的剧场当中所扮演的角色？
Well, to me, all theater is music. So if I'm listening carefully, I hear a fan in the room. I hear you moving your head. I hear myself breathing. I hear my fingers touch the glass. So if I'm listening, and now I start to sing or play an instrument, in a sense, the sound only continues, because there's always sound. As long as you're living, there's always sound. And there's no such thing as no sound. So to me, music is sound, and it's all a part of one thing. That being said, there are many different ways to construct sound and music. I've worked with someone like Laurie Anderson. I've worked with someone like Lou Reed, who is very interested in loud rock music. I worked with Luigi Nono, Italian composer, who's very interested in very quiet, meditative music. Tom Waits, who is very free, and I am different because of the people that I collaborate with. Tom and I are completely different. I wear a Giorgio Armani suit. Tom Waits would never wear an Armani suit. Tom is very romantic. I'm more classical. I'm much more cooler, more cool in my aesthetic. Tom is much more warm. And we're very different. And I think that together, perhaps we're more interesting than when we are separate. Because I bring something to Tom's work that alone he doesn't have. I think architecturally, I organize the space architecturally. It's classically constructed. Tom is just the opposite. In the case of Philip Glass, we think alike. We think alike in terms of the way he structures music is very similar to the way I structure space, so that's a different kind of collaboration.
There were red and yellow and blue, and I wasn't tempted to buy one, but I was reminded of the fact that I had been avoiding the beach. I was in this prematurely air-conditioned supermarket, and there were all these aisles. And there were these bathing caps that you could buy that had these kind of 4th of July plumes on them. There were red and yellow and blue. And I wasn't tempted to buy one, but I was reminded of the fact that I had been avoiding the beach. I was in this prematurely air-conditioned supermarket, and there were all these aisles.
借由您剧场工作的方式啊，您曾经和 Raymond Andrews， 您和他一起发起，然后发展出来的超现实主义经典作品啊，《聋人一瞥》。您在这个 Raymond Andrews 身上得到哪些启示啊？那您又是用什么样子的这个思考逻辑思维，将您自己的自身经验放在这一出剧作上，《聋人一瞥》这个剧作上面？
In the theater, I make ideally an actor, to be a good actor, you should be blind and deaf. And we're all blind and deaf at times. You're blinking your eyes. So for a fraction of a second, when your eyes were closed, what did you see? You don't know. It happened too quickly, but it's a way of seeing. So maybe it's a negative image. Maybe you're dreaming for a fraction of a second. But it's a way of seeing. I can, if I want, to listen very carefully. So I hear the man in the corner. I hear the woman here move her paper. I hear the fan in the room. I hear myself take a breath. And I can be listening outwardly. But I can also turn off and not hear anything. That I don't hear this fan. I don't hear you move your paper. You see the people in subways in New York City, that the sound is excruciatingly loud. And people just turn off, they don't hear it. They're in their own thoughts. So I think it's important that in the theater that I do, that you have interior screens of hearing where you don't focus on the exterior screen of hearing, or there can be interior screens of seeing. They say on subways in New York that there can be a murder of someone in front of someone and they don't see it because they're in their own mind, thoughts. And that there's a kind of balance between this interior space and exterior. And for me, so much of theater is so exterior that it doesn't allow this time for interior reflection. So I try to make a theater where it's more balanced between interior and exterior, audio and visual screens. My first play, written with a deaf boy, he'd been diagnosed as being someone who didn't hear. So as far as we measured his hearing, in the eardrum, up to 110 decibels. He heard nothing. But I learned one evening he was at the end of my loft, and I cried out to him. He was 13 years old, and I said, Raymond! And he didn't turn around because he didn't hear the sound. And then I did a very curious thing. I went, Raymond! Raymond! In the sound of a deaf person. And he turned around. And he started walking towards me, and I said, Raymond, how are you? Raymond, how are you? And he started laughing like, hey man, you're talking my language. And I realized that his body was more familiar with those vibrations of sound than the hearing world's language. One night I was at a piano and I hit the lower notes on the piano, and he put his hands in the lower part of the body. I hit the higher notes and he put his hands higher in the body. So the body was feeling vibrations of sound and, in a sense, was hearing. You know, with an earthquake, which we just had in China, it's very curious that animals were aware of this tremor long before man was, the human being. They felt it in the body. So I was once in a zoo in Berlin, and I walked up to about 14 or 15 gray wolves standing on rocks, and I stopped. And I didn't move, and they didn't move, and I was standing to their side. And they were aware that I was standing to their side. They were aware of one another, not moving at all, but we were all listening together. So the theater I make was very much influenced by hearing with the body. The way the deaf boy heard with his body, the way an animal hears or listens with the body. Watch a dog walking to a bird. His whole body is listening, right? The way the foot touches the ground, his tail, his back. He's not listening with his ears only. The whole body is listening. So our body, in a sense, does hear. And our body does see. They say even the blind can feel vibration of color. So we are seeing in the blink of an eye. So we hear and see as blind and deaf people.
Thank you for the interview. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you.
谢谢，谢谢，谢谢。
Bend my knee down to the ground.